What do you do when the most important waterway on the planet is completely shut down, but if you look at the surface of the water, you see absolutely nothing? No massive fleets clashing, no burning oil tankers, just quiet waves. But beneath those waves, hidden in a deep, invisible trench, a trap has just snapped shut. For 40 years, the Strait of Hormuz was the one card Iran could always play, the ultimate threat. If backed into a corner, they would close the strait and choke off a fifth of the world's daily oil supply. It was a threat so terrifying, it kept the entire global economy walking on eggshells. But this year, the United States military did something nobody saw coming. They didn't fight through the strait. They didn't bomb the coastlines to keep it open. Instead, they flipped the entire script. They created a ghost blockade, a blockade enforced not by visible warships on the horizon, but by silent, untrackable nuclear submarines lurking in the deepest, darkest trenches of the Gulf. Before we dive into exactly how the US Navy just pulled off the greatest underwater chess move of the decade, do me a quick favor, hit that subscribe button right now. If you want to actually understand the covert power plays shaping our world instead of just scrolling past shallow headlines, this channel is for you. Now, let's go deep underwater, because what is happening in the dark right now changes everything. To understand how brilliant this new trap really is, you first have to understand the geography of fear. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just a body of water. It is the most critical geopolitical choke point on Earth. At its narrowest, this channel is barely 21 miles wide, but the actual shipping lanes, the deep water routes that massive oil tankers desperately need to sail through, are only 2 miles wide in each direction. Just 2 miles. Through that tiny, fragile gap, nearly 20% of all the oil consumed globally must pass every single day. Tankers from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, and Qatar all have to squeeze through this exact same needle. For 4 decades, the Iranian regime looked at that map and saw their absolute greatest weapon. They treated that 2-mile stretch of water like a loaded gun pointed directly at the head of the global economy. Every time Western sanctions bit too hard or diplomatic talks broke down, Iranian generals would step up to a microphone and remind the world of the exact same nightmare scenario. Push us too far, and we will mine the strait. We will sink the tankers. We will turn the lights out on the global economy. It was the ultimate bluff, and for a very long time, it worked beautifully. The sheer terror of skyrocketing energy prices and global recession made powerful nations hesitate. Iran never actually needed to close the strait. The fear alone was enough. Until right now. Here is the detail that military strategists talk about behind closed doors, but the evening news almost always misses. The ocean floor is not flat. The Strait of Hormuz has a very specific underwater topography, and that topography just became Iran's biggest blind spot. Earlier in this conflict, Iranian forces made a move that seemed highly aggressive. They dropped sea mines in the northern parts of the strait, closer to their own coastline. The goal was obvious. They wanted to make the water dangerous, forcing commercial ships to panic and disrupting the flow of global trade. But in doing so, they triggered a massive unintended consequence. To avoid those northern minefields, massive oil tankers and cargo ships naturally shifted their routes further south, hugging the coastline of Oman. They moved away from the shallow, dangerous Iranian waters and into the deepest part of the shipping channel. And that deep southern trench? That is the absolute worst place Iran could have pushed them. Why? Because deep water is the natural hunting ground of the United States Navy. American nuclear-powered attack submarines are massive machines. They need deep water to maneuver, to stay hidden, and to operate effectively without being detected from the surface. By mining the shallow waters, Iranian military planners accidentally forced every single valuable target straight into the deepest zone of the strait. They pushed the entire chessboard right into the lap of the American submarine fleet. Iran spent years building fast attack boats and coastal missile batteries designed for close-quarters surface combat. But none of those weapons matter when the real enforcer is sitting hundreds of feet below the surface, quietly waiting in the dark. In trying to assert control, Iran accidentally created the perfect underwater trap for themselves. They never even saw the true danger waiting below. This is where the United States military pulled off an absolute masterstroke. For decades, the assumption was always the same. If a conflict broke out, America would have to fight its way through the strait, bombing Iranian coastlines to keep the shipping lanes open for everyone. It would be loud, bloody, and legally complicated. But Washington didn't do that. Instead, American forces flipped the entire chessboard. They stopped trying to fight for the strait and simply took control of who gets to use it. In brilliant, simple terms, the US Navy placed a blockade not on the Strait of Hormuz itself, but specifically on Iran's own ports. Think about the legal and strategic genius of this move. Under international law, blocking a major global waterway completely is an action that would enrage the entire world. It would turn global opinion against America. But blocking a hostile state-specific ports during an active conflict, that is a completely different legal category. So, ships heading to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, or Qatar, they sail right through, completely untouched. The global economy keeps running, oil keeps flowing, but any vessel trying to dock in Iran, or any tanker trying to secretly load Iranian oil, suddenly finds American warships and invisible submarines standing directly in its path. Iran spent 40 years threatening to lock the world out of the strait. Now, the United States has locked the strait, but only for Iran. The gatekeeper has just been locked out of its own gate. Now, let's talk about the absolute nightmare scenario for an Iranian naval commander. The real enforcers of this new blockade are not just the massive destroyers sitting visibly on the horizon. The real threat is the silent executioners patrolling the deep water trench we just talked about, American nuclear-powered attack submarines. These machines are the apex predators of the ocean. Unlike conventional submarines that have to occasionally surface for air, American nuclear subs can stay submerged for months. They generate their own air, their own fresh water, and their own power. Most importantly, they are engineered to be almost completely silent. And here is why that is so devastating for Iran. For years, the Iranian military built its naval strategy around swarms of small, fast attack boats. These boats are designed to speed across the surface and overwhelm a single visible warship. But those fast boats are completely useless against an enemy they cannot even detect. Thanks to decades of heavy economic sanctions, Iran's underwater sonar and sensor networks are severely outdated. They are effectively blind to modern American stealth submarines. Imagine being the captain of a small Iranian patrol boat right now. You are ordered to speed out into the strait and harass a commercial oil tanker. You scan the horizon and see an American warship miles away. You think you have the advantage, but what you don't know, what you can never know, is whether a multi-billion-dollar American attack submarine is hovering just 200 feet directly beneath your boat, quietly tracking your every single move. That uncertainty is paralyzing. It forces hesitation. It injects pure, freezing fear into every single decision Iranian commanders make. Because right now, in modern naval warfare, the most terrifying weapon isn't the one that fires first. It is the one you never see coming. This is what military experts are now calling the ghost blockade. It is a blockade enforced not just by missiles and guns, but by pure, unfiltered uncertainty. You see, the most brilliant part of this entire operation is that the submarines almost never need to fire a single torpedo to do their job. Their presence alone is the weapon. When an Iranian shipping company is ordered to send a tanker out of port to sell smuggled oil, the captain has to look out at the water and make a terrifying calculation. The sea looks completely empty, but is it? The fear of the unseen completely breaks down the normal chain of command. In a standard war, you fight what you can see. If an enemy ship blocks your path, you can calculate the odds. You can measure their guns against your guns. You can decide if you want to risk a fight. But how do you fight a ghost? How do you command your sailors to charge into a combat zone when the enemy could blow your ship into pieces from the bottom of the ocean before your radar even beeps a single warning? This psychological warfare is tearing the Iranian naval strategy apart from the inside. The ghost blockade has essentially turned the waters of the Persian Gulf into a massive haunted house for the Iranian military. They built a coastal defense force to fight surface ships, but they are completely blind to what is happening beneath the waves. The United States does not need to sink every Iranian ship to win this standoff. They just need to make the Iranian captains too terrified to ever leave the dock, and right now, that invisible fear is keeping those ports locked down tighter than any physical steel chain ever could. Why does this ghost blockade matter so much? Because to understand this conflict, you have to understand a harsh truth about how the Iranian regime actually survives. They do not stay in power because the public loves them. They stay in power because they pay the heavily armed Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to protect them, and that loyalty is incredibly expensive. Salaries for generals, funding for weapons, cash for allied proxy militias scattered across the Middle East. It all flows from one single source: oil money. Despite years of international sanctions, Iran survived by using a shadow fleet of ghost tankers, secretly smuggling discounted oil, mostly to China. That secret black market cash is the literal lifeblood of the entire regime. But a ghost blockade changes the math completely. When American warships and unseen submarines trap those shadow tankers inside Iranian ports, they are not just disrupting shipping, they are grabbing the regime by the throat and cutting its main economic artery. This is exactly why this underwater blockade is significantly more dangerous to the leaders in Tehran than a massive campaign of airstrikes. If a bunker gets destroyed by a bomb, you can rebuild it. If a radar station gets blown up, you can repair it. But if the oil money completely stops flowing, the entire foundation of the government starts to crack. Money buys loyalty in a system built on fear. When the cash dries up, the subsidies for everyday citizens disappear, inflation quickly skyrockets, and most dangerously for the regime, the guards, who are supposed to protect the leaders, suddenly stop getting their paychecks. The United States isn't just trying to win a traditional military battle on the water. They are slowly starving the entire regime of the cash it desperately needs to simply survive right now. So how is the Iranian government responding to this slow economic strangulation? If you watch their state-run television, you would think they are winning a glorious war. Shortly after the American blockade began, Iranian media released highly produced, animated propaganda videos. These cartoons showed American aircraft carriers burning and sinking, while Iranian missiles flawlessly overwhelmed U.S. defenses. But think about who those cartoons are actually made for. They are definitely not meant to scare the Pentagon. American military planners use real-time satellite data and live submarine tracking, not cartoon clips. Those videos are made strictly for the Iranian people. It is a desperate, calculated message aimed completely inward. The regime is dealing with a population that is watching their life savings evaporate. They are watching inflation destroy their ability to buy basic food, and they are watching their ports sit completely empty. The government needs to show them something to pretend everything is fine. But the louder and more dramatic the propaganda becomes, the more it reveals exactly how panicked the leadership is behind closed doors. You do not need to broadcast fake animated victories if you are actually winning in the real world. While state TV plays cartoons of burning ships, the brutal reality outside their windows is completely different. The ports are silent, the tankers are trapped, and the ghost blockade is slowly suffocating the entire economy. But there was one massive, billion-dollar backup plan Iran had secretly built for this exact nightmare. And it just completely failed. There is a fascinating, billion-dollar secret buried in the Iranian desert that almost no one is talking about. It proves that Iranian generals actually saw this exact nightmare coming years ago. For a long time, Iran quietly poured enormous amounts of money into building a massive overland oil pipeline. The goal was brilliant on paper. This pipeline was designed to pump crude oil from deep inside Iran directly to a brand new port on the southern coast, completely bypassing the narrow Strait of Hormuz. They wanted an insurance policy. If the strait ever closed, or if a war ever broke out in that tiny 2-mile channel, Iran could just flip a switch and export their oil from outside the danger zone. It took years of planning, heavy construction, and billions of dollars to build this ultimate escape route. But here is where the sheer genius of the American naval strategy completely shattered that backup plan. The United States didn't just block the Strait of Hormuz. They didn't just park their submarines in the narrow channel. The U.S. military placed a suffocating blockade on all Iranian coastal waters and all Iranian ports. Including the brand new port at the very end of that expensive pipeline, Iran spent years and billions of dollars building a secret backdoor to escape a trap in the strait, only to open that backdoor and find the exact same American warships waiting for them on the other side, and there is nothing they can do about it. So how is the U.S. Navy pulling off this massive blockade without a single ship slipping through? The answer lies in a piece of military technology that feels like it belongs in a sci-fi movie. It is called the Integrated Combat System. For a long time, naval warfare was pretty simple. One ship looked at its own radar, saw a threat, and fired its own weapons. That is the old way of fighting. But today, the American military does not fight as individual ships. They fight as a single, terrifyingly connected organism. Right now, above the Persian Gulf, American drones and surveillance planes are silently flying in the clouds. On the surface, guided missile destroyers are sweeping the horizon, and hundreds of feet below, nuclear submarines are listening to everything. Here is the magic. If a submarine detects an Iranian fast attack boat starting its engine, that submarine instantly shares that data with every single American ship, drone, and jet in the entire network. Within seconds, before the Iranian boat even leaves the dock, a drone miles away has locked onto its heat signature, and a destroyer over the horizon has armed its defense systems. This completely destroys Iran's oldest tactic. For decades, Iran relied on swarm attacks, sending dozens of cheap, fast boats at one ship, hoping to overwhelm the captain's radar. But you cannot overwhelm a network. When you attack one American ship today, you are instantly fighting every single American asset in the entire region at the exact same time. It is like trying to sneak up on a single guard, only to realize he shares a brain with an entire army. The old Iranian tactics are completely useless against this invisible web of integrated technology. This leaves Tehran completely trapped, leading to one final breaking point. All of this military maneuvering didn't happen in a vacuum. It was the direct result of a massive diplomatic collapse. Just before this ghost blockade was put into place, American and Iranian representatives sat down for intense, marathon negotiations. The stakes could not have been higher, but the talks completely failed. Why? Because of one impossible sticking point: Iran's nuclear weapons program. The American demand was simple and direct. Any agreement had to include a total, verifiable halt to Iran's pursuit of a nuclear weapon. No pauses, no temporary freezes, a complete stop. Iran refused. They called the demands an insult to their national sovereignty. That single disagreement is the fault line that cracked the entire region wide open. When diplomacy completely failed, Washington didn't just walk away. They responded with the most suffocating financial and military pressure campaign in modern history. For 40 years, Iran used the Strait of Hormuz to bully the world. They played a massive game of poker, constantly threatening to flip the table if they didn't get their way. But threats only work if the other side believes you, and if they are afraid to call your bluff. This year, the United States finally called it. They looked at Iran's ultimate threat, the closing of the global oil supply, and simply took the weapon right out of their hands. Now, the Iranian regime is staring at a chessboard where they have absolutely no moves left. They are entirely trapped with no real escape available anywhere. We are currently witnessing a fundamental rewrite of the very rules that dictate global power. For decades, the world believed that whoever controlled the physical surface of the Strait of Hormuz controlled the global economy. Iran built its entire national identity around being the supreme gatekeeper of that narrow strip of water. But the United States Navy just proved a brutal modern truth. You do not need to control the surface if you completely own the deep water beneath it and the integrated network above it. Today, the Strait of Hormuz remains completely open to the entire world. Oil flows to Europe, Asia, and the Americas without interruption. Everyone sails freely. Everyone, except for Iran itself. The nation that spent 40 years threatening to hold the global economy hostage is now the only country actually locked inside the cage. And somewhere beneath those dark, quiet waves, silent American submarines are still holding their positions. They do not need to fire their weapons to win. Their invisible presence alone is enough to freeze an entire military, drain an entire national economy, and force a regime to decide between giving up its nuclear ambitions or watching its foundation crumble. Wars are no longer won just by the loudest bombs on a traditional battlefield. They are won by whoever controls the resources the other side desperately needs to survive. If this breakdown helped you understand the real, hidden, covert strategy shaping our world, do not just scroll away. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who actually wants to know the truth behind the headlines. What do you think happens next in this hidden war? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below, and I will absolutely see you in the